Well, it's great to be back, and I'm particularly excited about this hour. For one thing, my favorite musician, Jason Mraz, is going to be joining us this hour. I love that guy. Anyway, okay, here we are for the fifth reason for hope. Just as solar technology and wind technology have both been declining in cost rapidly and increasing in the adoption of both technologies, just as affordable and efficient energy storage is getting better and better all the time and used more and more, just as the grids are getting smarter and stronger and more efficient, there's another breakthrough as well. You know, sometimes people say, well, with all the focus on the generation and use of electricity, what about the transportation sector? That's where a lot of the oil is used. Well, there's good news because electric vehicles, both hybrids and now increasingly the plug-in all-electric vehicles, are really taking off. For decades, we have relied heavily on the gasoline and diesel that internal combustion engines burn in order to move ourselves and our goods from point A to point B. Incredibly polluting, incredibly dirty, incredibly inefficient. But now, again, because the cost is coming down and the efficiency is going up, more and more people are buying electric cars. This trend has really started to take off just in the last few years. And the impact of this shift is going to be quite profound because in the next 20 years, the number of cars on the road of all kinds is expected to double globally to over 2 billion. A recent study estimated that cars and trucks together account for almost 1/4 of global warming pollution just from the fossil fuel combustion. So it's clear we need electric vehicles, and it's clear we can't continue to rely on dirty, dangerous fossil fuels. But here again is the good news, the fifth reason for hope. The electric vehicle market is booming. Very exciting. This is a measure of the hybrid and electric vehicle sales and sales projections. And as you can see, it's the same kind of trend that we've seen with solar and wind and batteries and smart grids. It's really taking off. In fact, just this year, the global EV market is expected to grow 86%. That's incredible. There are very few businesses that have that kind of growth. And look at all of the companies that are now in the business of making electric vehicles. A lot of well-known brands, Cadillac and Fiat and BMW, you can look at the entire list, but brand new companies are springing up at the same time. This global competition is really heating up very, very dramatically. And again, the financial analysts are looking at the implications for the global economy. And here's that word again, disruption. The electric vehicle's path to eventual disruption may be upon us. You know, there are times in history when we move from one era to the next. When the Industrial Revolution came along, we had not only the tapping of coal's energy, but also the steam engine, also the railway tracks, also all these intricately designed new machines that did work that used to be performed by individuals. And it wasn't just one new development, it was a lot of new developments that all worked together at the same time, and a new era began. Well, we're at that point again. We're going from an old era to a brand new, more sustainable, cleaner, more efficient, more exciting era based on all these renewable technologies. And the electric vehicle is a big part of it. So just in the past year in the United States, the number of pure plug-in vehicles doubled between June of last year and June of this year. And if you look at the cumulative EV sales in the United States, it's quite a dramatic story. We heard Dan Esty talking in an earlier hour about how he's a big fan of the Chevy Volt. Well, it is probably the biggest seller in this market so far, but the Nissan Leaf, which incidentally is made in my home state of Tennessee, I'm real proud of that. It's right neck and neck with the Chevy Volt. And then the exciting Tesla Model S. My friend Elon Musk has really captured the world's attention. It's one of his three big businesses that are changing the world. And some automotive writers have opined that the Tesla Model S may be the best car ever made of any kind. I'm not an expert, but boy, it sure is cool looking, and the owners absolutely love it. And then, of course, the Toyota plug-in Prius. Toyota was in some ways first out of the box, if you don't count the ones 100 years ago. But in the modern age, the Toyota Prius became an iconic symbol, and now the plug-in Prius is doing a great job. And you're seeing all of these other brands with smaller sales gearing up to challenge for this incredibly large global market for electric cars. And again, you can see the projections. The sales thus far are impressive, but the projected future sales are far more impressive. And it's another example of how these sustainable technologies fit together. Renewable energy, affordable storage, the better grids, and now electric vehicles. And by the way, one often overlooked feature of electric vehicles is that they are also themselves storage systems. The average car is used for transportation about 15% of the time. So 85% of the time, they're parked somewhere, either in somebody's garage or in an office parking lot, and they are now beginning to be used as part of this interconnected smart electricity storage system. And homeowners in some areas are really benefiting already from that. In Europe, the same story is unfolding there. Almost an 80% increase in EV sales this year compared to last year. Again, how many industries have an 80% growth rate year over year? This is a very exciting development, interconnected with these other trends. And in developing and emerging markets, the same thing is true. The Indian government is aiming to have 7 million electric vehicles within the next 6 years on the road. And those projections may well be exceeded. China has made a commitment to electric vehicles, exempting them from all kinds of charges that internal combustion vehicle owners have to pay. So where you have policies that recognize the damage done by the internal combustion engine and the benefits that can come from hybrids and particularly from plug-in electric vehicles, when governments encourage this transition, it moves along much more rapidly. And that is a very exciting trend. I mentioned the Tesla Model S. I don't own one. I wish I did, but I don't have room in my garage. I've got another electric car there now. But this is really a fantastic vehicle. And Tesla has become the largest car maker in the largest U.S. state, California. And Elon Musk, who I mentioned earlier, is a real visionary. People have learned to respect his predictions about the future. And I want to dwell on this one for just a moment, because it is very similar to the solar and wind electricity story. You have the advantages of less pollution and less global warming consequences, but you also have cheaper operating costs. And when Elon Musk says this being the competition between electric vehicles and vehicles that run on gasoline, he said that competition is heading to a place of no contest with gasoline. Already in many jurisdictions, the cost of running an electric vehicle is equivalent to $1 per gallon gasoline. And in an earlier hour, we talked about how all these financial projections are showing the likelihood of energy price deflation in the years ahead. And as renewable electricity becomes more affordable and with storage and grids more accessible, electric vehicles expand, all of a sudden the cost goes down further. And since the wind and the sun is free, a point worth reiterating, the cost of operating an electric vehicle continues to go down. And what's been happening to the cost of gasoline, by the way? Everybody knows the answer to that question, and everybody knows what to expect in the years ahead with oil in the Persian Gulf and Venezuela and these places that are fraught with danger and warfare and all kinds of other problems. So the lower cost of operating electric vehicles, again, is going to be a very powerful element in shaping the marketplace and convincing more and more people that the smart thing to do is to get an electric vehicle. I mentioned the Nissan Leaf. They've got a really cool policy of offering purchasers of the vehicle 2 years of free high-speed charging in certain markets. I think that's a great promotion. The Prius Plug-in by itself will displace 1.2 million tons of CO2 pollution. So it's all good. Now, I had the interesting experience a few years ago of dealing with the automobile industry, both the manufacturers as they grappled with the new mileage requirements. And by the way, kudos to President Obama. You hear about the rule on power plants. Don't forget the much higher mileage standards that are now in place. And the auto companies have been really doing a terrific job by and large in making the changes that allow us to achieve these higher mileage standards. But I also had the opportunity to deal with NASCAR. And I know the France family that founded the NASCAR organization, and if there is any sport that you would think is kind of viscerally inconsistent with trying to reduce global warming pollution, it might be NASCAR. But guess what? They asked me and others to meet with them and address the question, what could they do? I joked that it was mixing NASCAR and solving the climate crisis was a little bit like mixing sharks and tornadoes. But then I thought, hey, wait a minute, that was a hit movie. But in any case, they really have done some great things. And now, just last week, we have seen the introduction of the Formula E auto racing competition, the world's first fully electric racing series. And the very first Formula E race was held last week in Beijing. And by the way, the winner was a Brazilian driver, Signore Rossi. I want to congratulate, I'm forgetting his first name right now, but I want to congratulate him and Brazil for winning the world's very first Formula E race. So as the Tesla and other vehicles have already demonstrated, you don't have to think of electric vehicles as stodgy, pale substitutes for the kind of driving experience that was a kind of a romance in the second half of the 20th century with car buyers and drivers. It can be exciting, it can be thrilling, and the performance of these electric vehicles is fantastic. And a lot of people who have taken the time to do a test drive have found that out. So when you put it all together, the elements that we talked about in hours 1, 2, 3, and 4, with this latest reason for hope, the booming electric vehicle industry and the prospect of even cheaper renewable sources of electricity, making the driving of electric vehicles much, much cheaper and more enjoyable than driving the old, dirty, polluting internal combustion vehicles, you can see why this incredible revolution in transportation with the emergence of high-quality, affordable electric vehicles is yet another reason for hope.